And please remain standing for the playing of the national anthem of Jamaica. You may be seated.
Thank you very much, Naomi Francis, our press secretary. First, I would like to welcome the Most Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness to his quarterly press conference. I would like to also welcome our members of the cabinet, our permanent secretaries, and other members of staff from agencies, ministries, and departments. I would also like to welcome members of the media. And I would like to also welcome members of the public who are viewing live on nationwide Mellow FM, also on our Facebook, TikTok, and other pages. I will not tarry, as we have a lot to get through. Ms. Francis will now be going through how this press conference will be managed, after which we will welcome the Prime Minister, who will make his presentation, and then we will take questions from the media. Ms. Francis.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you so much once again, and Prime Minister. And so ahead of our start at 10:04, I informed the media we'll just be spending about 45 minutes. We ask members of the media to, when the Prime Minister is finished with his opening remarks, to raise their hand to be acknowledged. Maximum 2 questions per session. If we can take a follow-up, we will. We ask that you be concise. Identify yourself and your media entity. And very importantly, our press conference has a time slot. And so really we have allotted about 45 minutes this morning. And so, Minister, we invite you to invite the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and thanks very much to the media who have made it here today. We really appreciate your presence. I will now invite the Most Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness to the podium. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, everyone. I must say that I am very pleased to see this gathering. It has been a while since we have had a gathering like this. We must admit that our engagement with the media has not been as intensive as it used to be, particularly during and after the COVID pandemic. And as they say, nature abhors a vacuum. And so we have to fill that space. And that means that the government has to return in full force to engage with our media to ensure that the accurate narrative, the correct narrative, and the positive narrative is brought to the people of Jamaica. So it is good to be gathering like this with this engagement with our media. Before I begin, let me congratulate our Sunshine Girls for their success in South Africa. I believe they are now at the semis. Amazing. Congratulations are also in order for our volleyball girls, who are now the Caribbean champions after the tournament in Suriname. And of course, congratulations are definitely in order to our reggae girls, who have reached the knockout stage, a group of 16. That's the highest any Caribbean team has reached in the World Cup. So I'm very pleased with how our women are carrying the Jamaican flag very high. particularly in this Emancipendence season. We have a lot to be grateful for, a lot to be thankful for. Well, let's start with our economy. Our economy has transitioned. You can now classify Jamaica's economy as a stable economy. Our growth rate for the last fiscal year was 5.5%. Our inflation after the pandemic went as high as 11.8%. We are now down to about 6.2%, maybe a little bit lower. Our dollar has remained stable even after the fallout of the pandemic. But the one statistic that I really like to mention when I speak about the stability of the economy is our unemployment rate. Our unemployment rate continues to be low. I want to just quickly put this into context in terms of the unemployment rate. One of the greatest challenge of the Jamaican economy has been to provide employment for its people. And this has been our challenge since emancipation. And indeed, the labor struggles of 1938 was not only about working conditions, it was also about access to employment. Today, we can say that our economy over the last 4 years has been delivering for the people jobs. In the period of independence, jobs represent the route to personal independence. Having a job gives you income. Having income gives you the ability to have access to goods and services and to plan for your future. Indeed, that is the route to your personal prosperity. So, if you were to ask me what is the most important deliverable of the economy, it is to deliver to the people of the country employment. Because that is the root of your independence. So yes, our economy is doing well. But this is not to say that there are not challenges, because for many, there is the sense that they are mere bystanders to this success in the economy. Yes, there are many young people who are being employed, but there are also many young persons who are left out of the labor market. They are left out, some of them voluntarily so. They have decided to withdraw. And some of them are not in the labor market because they just simply don't have the skills and wherewithal to participate. And that is why the government has invested heavily in the HEART Trust, the HEART NSTA, National Service and Training Agency, to ensure that we can bring particularly our young, unskilled workers into the labor force so that they can get access to the jobs that are being created. There is also a sense that our pensioners have not been treated with fairly, and they probably feel that the economic progress is passing them by. This is not entirely the case. This is why the government has put in a social pension. The Minister of Finance is here if you want more details on that. But if you are 75 years and older and you have no income, you can apply to the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, and you can get support in a form of social pension. We have increased their pension benefits recently. And we have also increased the minimum wage as well. I make these 2 points at the extreme ends of the spectrum of the demographics to show that government policy is not merely focused on economic statistics. At the heart of it, at the core of it, it's about how the economy serves people. It serves them through jobs, and it serves them by creating the basis for a social safety net system that protects the most vulnerable in the society. But I want to focus on another area of the economy, but more so on economic management. The most destructive thing in any economy is inflation. There's one more variable that is more destructive, and that is called lack of confidence. But usually the two things are related inversely. When confidence starts to decline in an economy, you usually start to see some inflationary impact. If inflation starts to increase, you usually start to see some fall off in confidence. But I want to focus on inflation. A few years ago, the government changed its policy, particularly its monetary policy and fiscal management policy, to focus on controlling inflation, inflation targeting, to keep inflation within a range. Minister of Finance, you can help me. The range is between 4% and 6%. Why is it that it is so important to keep inflation under check and have a tight monetary and fiscal policy to manage that? Well, immediately following the pandemic, we saw a rapid increase in prices. This had nothing to do with the government of Jamaica. Despite our best efforts, prices rose. And they rose as a result of supply chain shocks, specifically due to the pandemic. But they also rose because of geopolitics, specifically the war in the Ukraine. That had nothing to do with the government of Jamaica. And in fact, all countries around the world face this. I was in the United Kingdom recently, and I thought I was still in Jamaica, because the conversation is the same. People are concerned about their incomes, the loss of purchasing power, and the loss of value of their consumption basket. And obviously, there is a pressure for more wages. However, as I had said earlier, coming from a high of almost 12%, our inflation is down to approximately 6.2%. That is not as a result of any change in global circumstances. To a large extent, the war in the Ukraine still exists. The grain deal has fallen apart, which is going to obviously have some ripple effects. Well, it has certainly started for the UK. But if you compare Jamaica's inflation with, say, inflation in the United Kingdom or other countries in Europe, Jamaica has done very well. But how do the people in Jamaica feel? And I think that is the ultimate question. How do people feel? The truth is that inflation has a lag, or rather has a lagging impact on people's outlook, because it takes some time for wages to catch up, to put you back in a position where your consumption that you were used to is restored. So I'm speaking here, and it sounds very theoretical, but what really am I saying? Inflation is when you go to the supermarket or to the market or to the corner shop and you say, sell me this or sell me that. And what you paid for it last time is more than what you're going to have to pay for it now. The consequence of which is that you may have to put back some or don't buy the product at all. Or if you buy the product, you can't buy something else. What's the impact of that psychologically? When you go home, you're going to be angry. It means less goods and services for your family. It means you may have to make a decision about which child you're going to send to school, if you're going to buy 3 school uniforms or you're only going to buy 2, or if you're going to cut meals. And that makes people angry. And it cuts across almost all segments of the society. But who hurts the most? The people with fixed income and people who earn no income. Government understands this very well. It feeds into, easily supports a narrative that nothing is happening and everything is going wrong, when clearly the economic metrics are going in the right direction. But psychologically, because of the impact of inflation, people's mood may not reflect that. Governments have to be, in this era, governments have to be smart. Governments have to be agile and responsive as well. So we, as a cabinet, we have been discussing what should be the response of the government. In an indirect way, the government has responded through the compensation review program, which has seen a massive increase in the government's wage bill. Now, notice I've said a massive increase in the wage bill. How people receiving that interprets it may be a totally different thing. But the truth is that the government's wage bill has increased by in the region of about $110 billion. Massive. Where is that money going? It's going to public sector workers. How it is distributed, I'm certain that there will be challenges and continued concerns, and we will work those out. But it means that households who are employed in the public sector will have more resources, and over time it will moderate, particularly as it relates to inflation. We have increased the minimum wage, another response. That also will help to moderate this impact of inflation. And so too the increases in pension. That will help to moderate. I'm not here by saying that we have solved the problem or we have totally compensated for purchasing power loss. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that the public should recognize that the government has responded. But there is more that we will have to do. Certainly, persons who are not working, persons who are not in the labor force, and a category that I'm very sympathetic to, the working poor, people who are employed, but their income certainly does not allow them to save. They can only consume, and they are not consuming at the level that would not classify them as absolutely poor. We have to reach out to those persons. We have to help those persons. We have to provide programs for those persons to be able to attain what the society agrees is the minimum standard of consumption that every Jamaican should have. And there are ways in which we are going to be able to do this. The first is that we have to target our students going back to school. So, yes, let's admit that an impact of inflation is to cause an increase in poverty. I mean, if people's consumption ability is reduced, particularly if they fall below the consumption threshold that would be absolutely poor, then clearly the impact of inflation would cause poverty to rise. So the government is sensitive to this, and the government will respond in a positive way to ensure that no Jamaican is left behind as we move towards prosperity for all Jamaicans. Now, I said in one way we intend to respond is through the education system. And we also intend to respond by ensuring that those persons who are not in the labor force now, by virtue of not having skills, that they are empowered so that they can get into the labor force. So we have decided that we're going to do a massive overhaul of the PATH program in significant ways to ensure that the beneficiary identification system is far more targeted than it is now. Too often when I go out into constituencies or communities, I get the complaints that, you know, I went to the PATH program and they came to my house and they say I don't qualify, but see my children don't have this and I don't have any income. There is clearly a refining that needs to happen in the entire beneficiary identification system for PATH. So that will be addressed to ensure that we are picking up those persons in our society who are genuinely in need of that social safety net support. And in terms of the back-to-school program, we're going to have to put more resources there to ensure that all our students are able to go back to school in a meaningful way. Because, you know, sorry, I need to give time for questions, so let me wrap up. But just my final observation, the government has been a victim of its own success. We have handled the COVID pandemic so well, and we have transitioned out of it so quickly that the average Jamaican feels that there was no lagging effect of COVID and everything is done. That's not the case. As a result of COVID, we have had high inflation, which has created this social discontent. As a result of COVID, we have had an increase in learning loss, which we're going to see impacting generations to come, certainly in terms of skill level, in terms of ability to maneuver the society. We are indeed picking up an impact in mental health. Increased aggression, increased depression, people just not being able to cope. We have seen changes in consumption patterns, which businesses are still trying to cope with. So in terms of people's spending patterns, in terms of their travel times, and all kinds of things have been disrupted. So yes, we have come out of the pandemic in terms of our economic strength stronger. We have had a major exogenous shock, meaning an external event that has disrupted the way in which we have done things, and not have an economic catastrophe as a result, which has always been the case for Jamaica. Whether it is a weather event or a commodity price shock or some global financial shock, Jamaica has always had a long depression after that. It's the first that we have had a shock. Yes, we have had a fallout, but the recovery has been so fast and rapid that the conversation forgets that we have had the shock. And it is important that in judging the government, that the public recognizes this and recognizes the effort that has been made in ensuring that the ship of Jamaica is stable. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm open to your questions.
All right, thank you, Prime Minister. We have some questions from members of the media. Again, we gave the ground rules earlier. Let's start off with Ms. Chisholm.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Quick questions. First of all,
sorry, you said quick questions or trick questions?
Well, it depends on how you perceive them. Thank you very much, Naomi, for the reminder. Andrea Chisholm from TVJ. PM, you mentioned the Back to School initiative. I do recall that the Finance Minister announced $3 million in back to school support for MPs through the CDF. Is this something different? And if so, what are the details of that back to school support? And very quickly, why wasn't the opposition consulted on the decision, the formal decision to increase the retirement age from the DPP and the Auditor General to 65 years through the constitutional amendment? And will you be sending JDF soldiers to Haiti? And if so, what's the objective?
Very quickly, what was announced by the Minister of Finance specifically for back to school through the CDF program is part of a general program. There are other initiatives that we will announce in the coming days, which will see employment for persons who are presently unemployed, particularly in ensuring that in the independence period and so forth, that we have cleaning up programs going on. And we will also ensure that our schools, that the resources that they need to get back up very quickly, that those resources are upfront in the budget. And you will hear more about other programs, more targeted programs, to ensure that those persons who are going to be doing PEP, for example, that they are particularly supported. In terms of your second question, the objective of the government of Jamaica in increasing the pension age of the 2 offices that are constitutionally acknowledged, the objective was to fulfill a government policy which started as far back as my recollection. When I was in the cabinet of Bruce Golding, the discussions were ongoing about increasing the pension age. I'm certain the previous PNP administration also carried that discussion as part of IMF considerations. In 2017, that found its way into legislation, cabinet decision, and then legislation moved by the Minister of Justice. It was debated in Parliament, so if you're asking about consultation, that is the ultimate consultation. So the issue of the increase in the pensionable age is something that has been well defined. The question is, why would there be an objection to this? And it would appear that the objection is not uniform. The objection is to one particular office versus another. So I will repeat, the objective of the government was to fulfill and perfect a policy that was well debated and universally understood to be in the interest of the country. It is in the interest of our pension system and in terms of ensuring that the country has access to skills and competences that have been developed over a long time. So I go no further on that one. In terms of Haiti, Jamaica was the first country to step out to say that we would be prepared to offer assistance to Haiti in terms of security and humanitarian assistance. We analyzed the situation to the point where we thought indirect assistance would not be enough. There would have to be a security force support for the people of Haiti. Clearly, Jamaica could not take the lead on this. We don't have the resources, even though we have the support, the ambition, the will, and we stand, as always, in solidarity with the people of Haiti. But we use good offices. We work through CARICOM to ensure that the stakeholders in Haiti continue to speak. We continue to lobby the Security Council, and we continue to do our international lobby. And so we're very happy to see that Kenya is on board. Possibly today, Minister, we'll have a word with the Kenyan president, but I also had long discussions with the Rwandan president, President Kagame, and he has also committed to give support. So it seems that things are coming together. The UN Secretary General has also been doing great work in trying to secure such a force. So as it is now, Jamaica's commitment still stands. We certainly can't go up to the 1,000 troops that has been suggested in media for the Kenyans, but we will give what we can. We have our own challenges here, and I think I need to say this for the Jamaican people, that whatever we do cannot impact in a negative way our own security challenges here. But as a sovereign nation, we look at all threats to our stability and security. And we act preemptively and strategically to ensure that we have capabilities to deal with those threats. Certainly, we can't deal with the threat of a massive migration problem should one occur, but we use our international partnerships to ensure that we are able to address it. And regardless of how we feel about the situation in Haiti and how it could impact Jamaica, in the core of the heart of every Jamaican is sympathy and solidarity. So I think that the way in which we have proceeded with Haiti is to fulfill both, to ensure that our strategic national interests globally, regionally, and locally are maintained, and at the same time fulfill our solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Haiti.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Our next is from the Gleaner.
Kimon Francis from the Gleaner. PM, just to be clear, are we sending troops to Haiti?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Which is what I said. We said this when we spoke in Parliament. We have said it before. Yes, we are the first to say so. In fact, you could say that Jamaica's statement would have started an interest in the situation in Haiti. And then, of course, security, and we said it in the Security Council resolution.
When?
Subject. So, what the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is very specific in our language, the question is, are we sending troops to Haiti? Yes, but an important caveat is that we just can't, on our own, as I've said, get up and send troops. We just don't have the resources. But even so, even if we did, you want to have an international imprimatur to do so. And so our commitment has always been with the appropriate jurisdictional arrangement, meaning a Security Council resolution to do so. And it is the same for Kenya, and when I spoke with President Kagame, it was the same requirement for him as well.
Despite improvements in the economy, crime management, and other indices, the government has lost momentum in opinion polls. How concerned are you that your administration is suffering from electoral fatigue midway this term?
Well, I would, if I were to say I was not concerned, I would not be telling you the truth. Obviously, we would be concerned. But you have asked the question in the correct way. Midway the electoral term, electorates experience fatigue. It is a reality that every government, except maybe one or two I can pick out for other reasons, one in Central America, is not experiencing this fatigue. And the fatigue is genuine on both sides of the equation, meaning that we went through a 100-year event which diverted the energy and the creativity and attention of the cabinet to focus almost wholly and solely on that. In other words, everything that we did, we saw it through the prism of the pandemic, just to ensure that the country came out strong afterwards. And that would have derailed many of the other projects that we have had. Of course, the country coming out without having to contend with the gloom and doom of an economic downturn immediately forgets that. And the focus is, well, what about the things that you had promised us? Then you pile onto that inflation. So obviously, the fatigue would have worsened. So the answer to you is, yes, we are concerned, but it is not that we did not expect it. We did expect it. And a part of our response has to be a recalibration in how we communicate. We can't take it for granted that people understand what is happening. So we have to be very explicit in our communications to people. And secondly, the immediate needs that are now pressing, we have to address those. And we have to acknowledge that the lagging effect of the pandemic is not just inflation, which 2 years after the pandemic we're still experiencing. 6.2 is just outside of the range that we would want. And remember now, to treat that inflation, we have had to increase interest rates, which has its own knock-on effect. Then we have the emotional and psychological issues. We have the health issues. Minister Tufton, I've asked him to give an update. Remember now, during the pandemic, we had to postpone elective surgeries and redirect our health resources. So there's still that lagging effect in the society, which somehow, nobody remembers that. Then we had the supply chain issues, which we have still not recovered. The problems with the South Coast Highway, one perfect example, the pipes that we needed to lay, there were many, many, many months delayed. And there are many other projects, particularly in construction, where this is the case, that we have had to wait. And in water, pumps that we ordered, just the production cycle was way behind, and we couldn't get them, and so there were communities that were disrupted. All of these issues are not in the minds of the public because we are saying to the public, everything is good, the economy is good. No, yes, well, yes, the economy is good, but the impact of COVID still resonates throughout the society. We have spoken about the learning loss. We have spoken about the psychological and emotional issues, the increase in the mental health issues. All of those are impacts on the society.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, you are aware that we are streaming live on social media as well, of course, on our traditional radio stations as well. But we have an interesting question on social media. And by the way, we are streaming live for the first time on TikTok as well. Paulette, though, on social media has been intent in asking about the diplomatic issues with the United States and why you went through a scanner without your shoes.
So one of the things that I'll open up to you about, what sometimes the public is interested in, and in terms of the priority for knowledge and information, from our perspective, meaning from the cabinet perspective, when we rank it with all the other issues we have to deal with, we might say, this is unimportant. But that is a big mistake, because truly, our public relations, and we need to be able to respond to all the issues, particularly in a time when you have a great propensity for falsehoods to become viral, and by their virality, they become truths. So let me first of all say it is absolutely not true that I had to pass through some scanner and had to take off my shoes or whatever else. That is absolutely not true. Having said that, you know, I've been traveling many years, and I remember traveling just when 9/11 happened. And they were just introducing this whole business of, you know, taking off when the shoe bomber and all of that. And I thought it was, you know, quite a dehumanizing thing to do. But having traveled many times and having to do that many times, it's now part of travel. However, when a head of state travel, there are certain protocols that should be maintained. So when I travel, I am traveling bearing the pride and dignity of the Jamaican people. So if I were requested to do that, it would have been probably a challenge. But I give credit to our friends in the United States who understood that there was some error on our part, which we have to admit, that didn't see the perfection of the request, and the matter was resolved.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Let's go to Al on that side, and then we'll come back over to Arthur.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Forgive me, I've lost my voice, a bit of flu. Prime Minister, tourism has rebounded. The gap between imports and exports is closed. The currency remains very stable. The public sector's got a bump. Post-COVID, can you point to any other Caribbean countries or small island developing states which can talk to this, and can you make a comparison?
If you're asking for all the variables that you have put together, no. I don't think there is another Caribbean country. Possibly Dominican Republic, possibly. But within, possibly Dominican Republic. But countries have done well on various of the variables, but not all of them together.
Thank you, sir. Arthur from the Observer.
Prime Minister, Arthur, the Jamaica Observer. In two countries in the region, the courts have ruled that the postponement of local government election was unconstitutional. Our local government election has been postponed to February. Can you say to the country today if we will go to the polls for a local government election by February?
The government intends to fulfill the constitutional requirements. and the Constitution, as it relates to the local government elections, they have set a date. It has been postponed. If there is need, if something happens, if there is an exogenous shock or weather event, then certainly that has to be considered. But as it is now, it is the intention of the government to fulfill its constitutional duties.
Thank you, sir. The RJR.
Good morning, Raquel Porto from Radio Jamaica News. The new school year begins on September 4. Where is the government with plans to boost the fleet of JUTC? And what about the new buses that should have been on the island by now?
Could I, Minister of Finance, you're in a position to give us an update on the buses?
Prime Minister, I'm only able to do that because Minister Vaz and I talk constantly on this. The buses that are to arrive in this fiscal year will shortly be here. And as I would have announced or would have reminded the country in a budget presentation, we have 50 plus 25. We are making plans for buses to arrive in next fiscal year and the fiscal year after that. We had initially spoken about 200 electric buses. However, the compressed natural gas buses that we had, the 5, the performance has been excellent, and there are discussions as to whether we could accelerate the arrival of the new 100 by expanding the compressed natural gas program. That is not yet a decision, but just in the interest of transparency, just sharing with you live update as to where we are. So we're fully on track for the buses to arrive, the 200 that I spoke about, but we could even do better than projected if we go the way of the compressed natural gas buses, compressed natural gas buses for half of that 200 quota.
Right, so your answer is the buses are on way, and possibly if we make a decision on the use of CNG, we could rapidly expand that.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Minister. We have a question in the back. Could you identify yourself?
Good morning. Natalia Clark from CVM TV. 2 questions. What's the mood in the JLP regarding the 6 parliamentarians being investigated for illicit enrichment by the Integrity Commission? Are there any concerns? And what's the JLP's response to members of the PNP suggesting the extension of the DPP's tenure is connected to these investigations and the JLP wanting to maintain some kind of influence in the office of the DPP?
To your first question, I would say nonsense. And it is unbecoming of someone who holds a constitutional office to bring into disrepute, literally, another constitutional office holder. As it relates to the matters of the Integrity Commission, my own position is that I don't discuss those matters.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Another question from the back, nationwide.
Good morning. Shalois Michael from Nationwide News. I know that the retirement age of the DPP and Auditor General have been extended. Do you intend to offer the DPP a second extension in office? And if yes, why? And what do you make of the PSOG's call for more civility in public political discourse?
To start with your first question, I welcome the call for greater civility. I have been on record, particularly in the 2020 campaign. I have made civility a campaign issue. And I think we all have to agree that there has been a debasing of the national discourse to the point where you could say it is uncivil. And leaders have a duty to ensure that they elevate the debate regardless of whatever political opportunism that they may see. There is still that duty and obligation to ensure that the national debate is elevated. In terms of the office of the DPP, I think it really depends on the DPP. She has an option if she wants. So,
All right, thank you so much. I see no further hands for questions. May I ask, are there any other questions? All right, Prime Minister, over to you for wrap up.
Again, let me, and we did it on time, 45 minutes almost, good. So let me thank you. Let me thank you all for coming, and I thoroughly enjoyed the engagement.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. Minister Morgan?
I would like to also thank those who tuned in to us on Love FM. I did not mention Love FM, but I want to thank all the members of the government from the Cabinet, permanent secretaries, representatives from ministries, agencies, and departments, and most importantly, members of the media who came here. We expect to do more of this. We will make the announcement. Remember, post-cabinet press briefing, 8 a.m. next week, Wednesday sharp. Thanks also to those on social media who joined us as well. Until next time, have a wonderful and safe day. Thank you. Refreshments are also being provided at the back of the room. Thank you very much.